Record button. Hi there, welcome to iTWireTV. Today we're speaking with Paul Moxon, Senior Vice President of Data Architectures for Denodo, and Benjamin Henshall, General Manager for Denodo Australia and New Zealand. Thank you both, gentlemen, for your time. Nice to see you.
Nice to be here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, we have spoken with Denodo a while ago, but I guess, can you help for our audience today? Can you give us, what's the elevator pitch about Denodo?
Ben?
Yeah, so look, thanks very much for that, David. The main elevator pitch, or I guess executive summary of the role of Denodo, is integrating, managing and delivering data in a way that fundamentally transforms businesses' ability to make massive and brilliant decisions. Now, the crux of the problem that addresses every organization is making faster, more timely, insightful decisions and answering questions that they don't even know that they have at the point in time of their operations. And Denodo makes the ability to combine and integrate and deliver that data in a way that fundamentally transforms decision-making as we know today.
Fantastic.
I just add to that very quickly that Denodo is also recognized as a leading data integration, data delivery company. Forrester, Gartner, we're in the leaders quadrant of the Magic Quadrant with Gartner, the leaders part of the Forrester Wave for data fabrics, etc. So, you know, it's well-established, well-recognized company.
Awesome. And I guess, you know, Denodo, you mentioned data virtualization. I guess what's changed in the world of data virtualization over the last couple of years?
Oh,
yeah, I was going to say I'll take a stab at this one. I think first of all, it's an acknowledgement and acceptance by a lot of leading organizations, a lot of leading companies that their data is going to be distributed. The idea of having this single repository where you go and put all the data to do all of your analytics, get all of your insights. You know, we've tried that for 30 years and it's not worked. It's not going to work in the future. Even with data lakes and cloud data warehouses, you know, we're still going to have distributed data. So this has led to a lot of interest in data architectures that are based on the premise that the data is going to be distributed. It's going to be in your data center. It's going to be in the cloud, maybe multiple clouds, maybe multiple countries or regions. So modern data architectures such as data fabric and data mesh are really starting to take off. And then realizing that data virtualization provides this foundation technology. It's an enabler for these modern data architectures. So organizations are starting to realize that data virtualization is a must-have capability in their architectures.
Okay, fantastic. And what do you think is driving companies now to evolve their data strategy now that, you know, business conditions hopefully are moving back towards normal? What's the driver now that you see?
First of all, I would say that, you know, the question is, you know, what is normal? I mean, we're still facing the challenges. You know, we're still facing supply chain disruptions. There's a potentially a looming recession, tightening of budgets, etc. But I think a lot of the changes were things that started during the pandemic. During the pandemic, companies had to change their business model. Think of retail. All of a sudden, the retail shops are shut down. They have to suddenly evolve into being online stores, change all the logistics to deliver to the home, etc. And all of a sudden, they had this need. We need data. They recognize that data is a strategic asset that drives the business, not just something in the hands of IT. So people are starting to look at the data differently. And that's starting to make them think, okay, how do I best utilize, how do I best take advantage of the data that I have? How do I unleash it? How do I make it available across the organization? And this is what Ben says, so that we can make those better decisions, have those better insights to drive the business forward and not just treat data as something that IT takes care of in their data warehouse thingy.
Yeah, David, I would just add to that I think the role of COVID, or the impact of the COVID, has only expedited and increased the demand that the business and all facets have around data. And I think it's fair to say that we all have, to some degree, a fractious relationship with data. And so there's not the creation of data as a problem, it's how to manage it, integrate it, understand it, and then make decisions, both operationally, analytically, from a data science point of view, from a systems to systems point of view. There's a fractious relationship because data is not integrated well. And this has been a conundrum for pretty much every single institution, from government to finance to logistics to retail to pharma to science to engineering, pretty much you name it. Data has become a need for being a first-class citizen as a capability in every institution because of what COVID has done. And I think at a board level and at a CEO level, it's become really, really important from their point of view of how reliant they are on it. And I think this is a really, really interesting access point that's come from COVID and the world of all the IT changes in data and clouds and AI and ML and data science and all those sorts of, lovely buzzwords and technological changes. Data is a key capability that organizations have, to some degree, a fractious relationship of how they're supporting the business in that. And I think that's where Denodo is in a really interesting space that is helping organizations rethink the way they can integrate, manage, and deliver that in a way that fundamentally overcomes what's called data silos. Because the traditional or current thinking of how they manage that data is what's called the physicalization of where it's stored. And that is only part of the problem. It's how to integrate it and deliver it at scale and in a wide variety of users that the business demands. And this is where virtualization is a critical way to redo that.
Yeah, fantastic. So that's amazing. And especially you mentioned across all industries. I guess one big question then is, are you still helping traditional enterprise with data? We talk about financial institutions, insurance companies, large commercial organizations, or are you actually seeing a big change in the companies that you work with?
I think Ben touched on this when he was answering the previous question, that it's companies of all sizes and all industries, they have data challenges. It's in addition to the companies that you mentioned, you can talk about manufacturing, retail, government agencies, healthcare, and so on. They all have data challenges. It's not unique to the big banks or the insurance companies. And they all have the challenge of their data is locked away in these silos, and it's not easy to access and utilize it. And it can be smaller companies, mid-sized companies, not just the big boys. So we can also support smaller companies through our cloud marketplace offerings, allow them to start small and then grow as they realize the value of using the Denodo platform to sort of unlock their data.
Yeah, fantastic. And Ben, you.
Yeah, look, I would add that, and I got asked this question not so long ago at another interview we did, and the interesting thing about Denodo is that when we look at the customer base and industries that we support, no one sector is overweight versus another. And that's to Paul's point that every institution, particularly with COVID, has demonstrated that the way businesses make decisions, shift, change, and drive resilience and optimization is through data and the need for timely, integrated, curated, understandable data. And that is where, to a slight technical aspect, comes down to data architectures, data plumbing, data delivery, and that's the bit obviously Denodo plays in. But there's a huge latent demand that's been driven and risen to the surface in every institution effectively there, David, that is relying on integrated data to be able to support the way that businesses make their decisions today and tomorrow. And that is not restricted to just several industries. It's effectively across every industry, and that's reflected in Denodo's numbers, sales numbers, that covers effectively every major industry. So it's not one versus the other.
Sure. And Ben, you were talking about, why you would adopt a data virtualization platform. So I believe I understand that, with data virtualization, like I guess in a traditional, data architectural warehouse, you've got to replicate data and then you have latency between your results, but you can solve that. Is that right? So I guess what are the pain points that go away when you deal with data virtualization?
Yeah, actually, David, I might defer to Paul, given he's running our data architecture. So, Paul, I'll let you take a great stab at that one, sir.
Yeah, I mean, there are many benefits that you get from using data virtualization, but I still think it comes down to the fundamental pain point that the Denodo platform is reducing, is breaking down those data silos. Latency, if the data is still in silos, is irrelevant. I can't get to the data. So breaking down those data silos, liberating, democratizing the data that is trapped in these silos so that the users have access to the data, faster and easy access. So yeah, you are reducing latency, you are reducing replication. But the fundamental problem is, how do we give that access to the data? But also doing that with security, privacy controls in place. I was talking about latency and things like that to one of our customers, and he said, no, Paul, security first, then you can break down latency, because if you don't have security, we're not interested. So all types of organizations want to become data-driven. They're on this, we want to become a data-driven organization. They want those insights into their customers, their operations, etc., so they can get better, they can deliver better products, they can have better engagements with their customers, and so on. But to do that, they need to make the data available. And that is the fundamental pain point that the Denodo platform and data virtualization addresses: how to make the data readily available to the people who need the data, when they need it, and how they need it, without the latency and replication.
And I would just add to that as well, David, that the other part that's really, really profound when we talk to customers and the changing nature of how data is becoming a first-class requirement for all organizations is making data readable and usable. So it's one thing to make data available, to what Paul's pointing to, and that's the classic data silos. Data lakes don't necessarily solve that. Clouds don't solve that, because they're not making integrated data available. It's how to make that integrated data usable and readable and discernible by all facets of the business. And anybody who's trying to do, say, an Excel report or use a Power BI visualization tool is trying to read the data from the data source, and they don't understand necessarily the fields, the tables, the nomenclature from it. So it's putting a glossary and a business context of what that data is, so that the business understands what they're looking at. And so Denodo has spent a lot of time putting what we call a business interface on integrated views of that data through our catalog that makes it readable and discernible and usable. And that's a really, really important pain point and fundamental fractious constraint that organizations have with data. Even if it is available, they can't read it and understand it and discern it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I can really see how that is a big need, and how that really provides massive value. I guess if a company, let's say I was a new company and I came to you, Paul and Benjamin, and said, look, I want to go down this journey of having a successful data plan, but what advice could you give to people, to companies, to be successful from the start, rather than, try to deal with their problems later on? How can they position themselves in the best way for success to begin with?
I wish we had lots of organizations like that. Most of them are dealing with the legacy in the first place, and many of them have got decades and decades of legacy. I actually think Ben, sort of hit on some of these points previously when he talked about understanding what the business needs. We do lots of things in IT. We're great at doing things to have shiny new toys, to have shiny new technologies, but it's not really driving the business forward. It's just giving us a better mousetrap, so to speak. Whereas really, if you look at what does the business need, what data do they need, why do they need it, what format do they need it in, how are they going to access it, how are they going to be able to find it, that starts you delivering, fulfilling the purpose of delivering the data, delivering those insights to the business. Without that, you're just building more and more silos. You're just building nice tools which don't really do anything for the business. So, this is going up a level above the technology requirements into what does the business need, why do they need it, how do they need it, and then can we deliver that to them, instead of just, can I have a shiny new toy because it's got the word cloud and data lake in front of it or something like that.
Yeah.
And I would also add, David, I think to Paul's point, there's not net new sort of organizations starting from scratch, and there are organizations that have done that, and they've even got themselves into troubles with regards to the relationship with data, because we've got more technology, more SaaS, more cloud systems, more data tools than we know what to do with. It was quite simple 20 years ago, and even then we couldn't sort out our data management problems. But I would say that the real fundamental principle for thinking about how do I reset and start to refine the way I'm integrating and managing the delivery of data is to take a logical abstraction first approach. And that is, how do I pull out all the decades of my data business logic that's siloed and sitting within those data repositories and even data lakes, and lift that up and put that in a layer that is abstracted away from where the data sits, and put all my business rules and my data logic in this abstraction view that then can be viewed and harnessed and tapped into by the business, irrespective of where that data physically resides. And that comes to the point of data silos, that we have a whole lot of data logic that's sitting in these cloud systems and lakes and enterprise data warehouses and SaaS systems that's hard to get at. And if you can lift that logic and all that IP into a logical view that separates from where the data physically sits, and then the business can read that logic and tap into that and tap into that integrated view, then that's a very, very powerful way to deliver fast time to information, fast time to integrated views, better decision-making. And then I can move my data to a new lake, a new cloud, and new systems of repository without having to try and rewire all that logic into that new lake or into that new cloud system. And that's a really fundamental shift and design principle. And I would just close with this, saying that Forrester and Gartner and even IDC, they recognize this view of a logical first approach to data business logic as a real fundamental game changer for organizations to be able to deliver better integrated views of their data.
Yeah, wow. No, very insightful. I appreciate that a lot. And I guess, just turning to Australia for the moment, one thing I hear is that, Australia is moving a lot faster towards digital maturity than a lot of our neighbours. And obviously I take pride in that. But I'm just wondering, firstly, in your experience, is this truthful? But secondly, why do you think that? Why would Australia be, moving faster on digital transformation than others, perhaps?
I'm going to defer to you, Ben, on this one.
Yeah, maybe Paul can give a more sort of other global perspective, but at least from an ANZ point of view, I would slightly temper that, saying that yes, Australia is quite forward-leaning in its thinking and culture around data. So having travelled across east to west, north to south, and gone to various conferences and speak across various markets and clients, that yes, there's a lot of conversation and there's a lot of good intentions of trying to uplift the data conversations at the board and CEO level, and investments in that. And chief data officers will talk about that, and they don't necessarily report to the CIO, they're reporting to the business, which is a really good fundamental change. But I would certainly say that there's a long way to go in the way that data is being utilized within the ANZ market. There's a lot of value that's still yet to be unlocked. And there's a real fundamental challenge that hasn't been addressed in the way that they're architecting and building a data capability to support a wide berth of requirements that the lines of business within these institutions need. That has really not been unlocked at scale and to the level that is of that value that's still stuck in these data repositories that are there. But from an Asia Pacific point of view, there's certainly a lot of innovation that's going on, because the guys in, say, Southeast Asia, they've got different data challenges given scale, resources, physical topologies, like Indonesia and Southeast Asia, lots of islands and lots of, lower cost markets in the way that they're trying to encapsulate that data and deliver to support the businesses. So I'd say that, Asia is doing a lot of innovative things, particularly with Denodo, to support that, where Australia could learn from. But notwithstanding that, certainly Australia is having a much richer conversation about investments and how they're trying to use data, but there's a lot of value yet to be unlocked. Paul, what about you? What's your view?
I would actually say that's a fairly good summary of the world, not just Australia. Everybody thinks that, the United States, everything's well advanced, etc. When if you actually go to places like Singapore, in many ways, they're much more advanced than, say, the United States or countries in Western Europe. And I agree with Ben that there are a lot of discussions going on about data, treating data as a strategic asset, how it can help drive the business, but companies are starting on that journey. I don't think they're any more advanced, particularly in the United States or in Europe, than they are here in Australia. Like I said, you do have some pockets of very heavily digitized organizations. The Singapore government, for example, is light years ahead of many federal governments. I can guarantee that of working with lots of government agencies. So, lots of conversations, lots of good intents, but very early on the journey in almost all regions, all countries.
Yeah, great. Excellent. No, that's really interesting. And I suppose, look, what's on the horizon for Denodo? Are there any big plans that you can share with us at this time?
Well, we're continuing to grow. From a company point of view, we're growing at about 50% a year. So, the opportunity in the market is there. We've talked about that earlier. And obviously, Denodo is growing to take advantage of that. I know that probably very late this year, early next year, we will actually be introducing a managed service offering for the Denodo platform. And that's going to really help us in that mid-market, smaller organizations where they don't have that big IT department. When we talk about the big banks, the big financial services organizations, they have their big IT departments. And managed service SaaS type offering for the Denodo platform will help us expand into that smaller mid-market organizations. That's going to be a big thing for us going forward, as it helps us sort of expand the scope of the type of customers that we're dealing with. Yeah. Anything to add, Ben?
Yeah, look, just from I think, Dave, from an ANZ point of view, we're continuing to expand the team. We're almost doubling the team within the next 18 months. So, that demonstrates just good financial viability and the opportunity and growth that's occurring in the ANZ region, and the confidence that we have in terms of the market potential and the value that we can derive and bring and already brought to organizations like BHP and RMIT and Capricorn and Silverchain and those sorts of organizations. So it's a very, very exciting and interesting nexus point that's occurring in this whole world of data, and the role that Denodo can play, and the fact that that's being taken up by the Australian, New Zealand customers, and expansion to continue to grow and support that opportunity that we have.
Yeah, fantastic. No, that's been wonderful. I appreciate your time a lot. Thank you both, Paul and Benjamin. Thank you so much for spending time with us today to tell us about Denodo, data virtualization, data transformation, and what companies are doing and the great successes you guys are seeing among your customers. That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much, David.